for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for just a moment. The last time this board met was a few days before the passing of Chief Darren Spaulding. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Chief Spaulding, please. Thank you. Godspeed, Darren. Welcome to the Weathersfield Select Board meeting. Today is Monday, April 22nd. Agenda review. Is the agenda look like it's all in order for everyone tonight? Any additions or corrections to the agenda? You're all set? Hearing none. Comments from Select Board, Town Manager, citizens, topics not on the agenda. Anybody on the board? Anybody from the audience? Mr. Harrison.
I'll give a quick report. 3 weeks till adjournment. Yay.
Yay!
For you.
There's still a lot of work. There's a lot of bills that, all the money bills originate in the House. They went over to the Senate. The Senate is finishing up with them. They'll come back to us with changes, and then you hash it out if it comes in. The bills that absolutely have to be passed, the transportation bill, they call the big bill, which is everything else, and the capital bill, which is the borrowing bill. All three of those have to make it out of down before we adjourn. A couple other bills of interest. There was a bill that made its way earlier. I talked to Brandon quite a bit about it, that would have significantly impacted our abatement of taxes and tax sales. I was really concerned the way the original wordage, it got watered down some in the House, it got watered down a whole bunch more in the Senate, and now the wordage there's a lot more reporting to do to the people that are having their house seized, the property being seized, but I think that's appropriate. But the biggest concern was that they were going to lower the interest rate to prospective bidders, and to the point where I don't think anybody would have bid. And guess who would have been the bidder? Town. And so anyway, it's back up to its original level. So I think we're going to be okay with the wordage like it is. Another bill that actually we're finishing up tomorrow. Everybody know what a ghost gun is? Which one that you make? They're not going to be illegal to make, but if you make one out of parts, out of plastic, whatever you do, it will be illegal to own it unless you take it to a gunsmith, have its serial number stamped on it, and the serial number registered with the Fed, so it's in a database. I have no problem at all with that. Another component of that same bill is, I'm not real fond when they mix stuff that really don't have a lot to do with each other. It's prohibiting hunting coyotes with dogs. I guess I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. If anybody does, let me know soon. Those are the big ones that are coming up. Once again, in the next few weeks, there'll be really a lot going on. Please reach out.
Thank you. And a bad one on me. Everybody sees the lectern over here. Please, if you want to, at any point when you're speaking or addressing the board, come up to the lectern. Should have told you that before you spoke. And it's mainly because the people online have a hard time hearing from the audience. They can hear us because we've got microphones up here, but the audience is far enough away that it kind of gets lost for them.
Is my control okay or not?
What? I'm sorry?
Is mine okay or not?
I think you're okay.
Okay.
And if you just tell us, your name and so forth, so we know who you are, that's
That's a
helpful.
good point. Representative John Harrison.
I know you.
And
why did you ask?
Any other comments from citizens? Topics not on the agenda. Dave?
I have a question for John. If nothing's gonna change on that tax collection bill, then what are they taking it up for at all?
Well,
That's okay, I mean,
the original part of the bill was brought forth mostly by ACLU. There was a tax sale someplace in the western part of the state where the person lost their house for like $6,500, and they didn't feel that the due process was adequate. So that's the reason they really toned it to a point where it was going to be 2 years before you could even start a tax sale. It was going to have to be $20,000 worth of arrears before you could start a tax sale. I mean, that's ridiculous. You get some on-landed mobile home, you'd never reach that threshold. You'd never be able to put it up for tax sale. So all that stuff has been ratcheted back to just about the same level. I think people realize that through testimony and especially the Senate really took care of several of the problems with it. And, you know, they took the interest rate that you would be paid down to 6%. I don't feel that anybody would bid. But what's still in the bill is a panel to look at several issues and report back next year. So it'd be a good idea to keep an eye on it. BLCT was very vocal in opposition of the bill, and they were in, every time there was testimony, they were in and looking after the town's interests. Good enough? Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, John. Review minutes of previous meeting, 4/8/24. Do I hear a motion to approve minutes of 4/8/24?
I move to approve the minutes of 4/8/24.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded for the minutes of 4/8/24. Any corrections? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes 4/8/24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? A motion to approve the minutes of 4/12/24.
I move we approve the minutes of 4/12/24.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And I vote aye. The minutes carry. Public hearing, Article 2, zoning districts and district standards, and Article 7, definitions. I don't see our land use administrator.
He's online.
Oh, there he is. Very good. I will turn it over to you, Ryan.
Sure. So we were here last month talking about this private airstrip and helipad bylaw. It's a new use that's going to be applied to all the different tables for each district, and the use itself is a prohibited use in all districts. So this, just a little bit of background. It came from a letter that was sent around in 2021, kind of from the state transportation board, explaining some issues that have happened where their regulatory process requires the town's involvement to some degree. A review of a project if they're going to add a private helipad or airstrip to their property, but most towns don't have a regulatory mechanism to review those projects with, whether that's zoning or another ordinance or something else. So this is the Planning Commission's choice for addressing that use. And so at the last meeting, we had some discussion about the definition of private airstrip or helipad. And so I guess the question that some people had raised was, does that include hot air balloons and drones and ultralight planes and different types of private personal aircraft? And so per that discussion, we went back to the Planning Commission and changed the definition a little bit to to specify that the type of aircraft that this applies to is something that has a FAA N number registration. So basically, and I think this in part came out of John Anderson's comments, but I think that applies to aircraft over 500 pounds. And then for further clarity, we added excluding drones and hot air balloons. So those don't apply.
Any questions?
So is an ultralight, is he considering an ultralight a drone?
No, I think the word ultralight, but I'm really not familiar with the different terms, but I think that's like a small personal aircraft that someone flies. And there's probably different sizes of it, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the 500-pound number is if your aircraft is over that, it needs to be registered with the FAA and given an N number.
Right, it wouldn't have an N, it wouldn't, unless it's over 500 pounds, it wouldn't have an N number.
Right, but he just says excluding drones and
But go
air
back
balloons.
before that, and it says the takeoff and landing of any FAA N-numbered registered vehicle.
Yeah.
So if it's not an N,
Excluding
so if it's
drones.
not, huh?
Excluding drones and
That's
air.
a separate, that's
Okay.
a separate phrase.
So regarding ultralights, there might be some that are allowed. There might be some that are larger than that that would not be allowed. But we didn't want to call out the ultralights specifically like we wanted to with the drones and hot air
Okay.
balloons, because they're just the noise and the intensity of that use is different.
Any questions? Dave?
I see a problem with the definition of what a private airstrip was, because when we were here before, John had mentioned that perhaps someone would build something so they could take off or land with their, whatever unit you'd like to call. So clearly, there would need to be a definition of what that is.
The development or use of any land for the purpose of takeoff or landing of any N-numbered registered aircraft is not allowed.
But if you look at, it's continually going here, uses not permitted, they're all going through all of these things. It says the last yellow highlighted thing is private airstrip or helipad.
Yes.
Every single one of them.
That's not the definition. That is actually the tables.
Okay,
It's all the way to the back.
If you go down at the end, it says definition,
definition
Article
seven.
7. At the conclusion of this.
so you're saying the definition is there where ultralights can build their own if they want to, on their land, whatever that it might be. Somebody might want to put pavement down, I don't know. I don't know.
No, they can't.
What do you mean?
Well, actually, for if it's non-registered, yes, they can.
Okay, that's what I want to clarify, because when I was scrolling down through here, it would say private airstrip, private airstrip, private airstrip, and then you're telling me that a definition at the very end. Well, but I agree with Kelly when she said, I think you need to put I don't know why you don't want to put the word other, because with time, how do you know that you seems like you're only restricting drones or hot air balloons?
You're excluding them.
Yeah, so, but that's where I'm going, because suppose with technology, somebody has some other device or whatever, but you've picked out those two words, a balloon or a drone, but some other device that could be used that goes underneath the 500-pound or whatever it is threshold. My point is, why are those in there? Why don't you take all that parentheses out and then leave it alone with unregistered? Because is the FAA registered drones or hot air balloons?
No, not that I know of.
I think
Or it's
on
different.
the hot air balloons at least, they might if it's over 500 pounds. And so those two uses we called out because we know they exist. And if there are future uses or future technology that fits kind of in that same category, then it's amendable. We can add it if it becomes a problem. Or we recognize an opportunity
I'm in favor of clearing this up before it hits the third reading, so that it can be.
This doesn't hit a third reading. This is not an ordinance, this is a zoning bylaw.
But we're in a hearing,
That's correct. We're in a hearing.
so doesn't it take 3 hearings and then the
No.
third one approves?
No.
What does it do?
Ryan, can you explain that to him?
So there needs to be one or more hearings. So this is the first, it's been continued once, it's still the same hearing. The board has the option to accept it as is. They could say we want minor changes that don't change the intent of the language, and the planning commission, like what happened before, can take it up and make changes, or it can be denied. But there doesn't need to be another hearing warned and everything. So this is a continuation of the first hearing.
What is the, and I didn't think of this earlier until you said that there might be a hot air balloon that's more than 500 pounds, because it seems like a lot. What's the likelihood that we run into problems with drones becoming large, right? Like, I think of drones as these small things, but the last thing I think I'd get really excited about is somebody flying a 700-pound drone over my house because that was legal. And maybe, I don't know if they make them that big, I don't know anything. But if the 500 is the limit, why do we have drones in here, right? Because over 500, somebody remotely operating one over your house might not feel that comfortable.
Ryan?
So I think the reason was just because drones, I guess, they serve a different purpose and they don't have the same nuisance level. So if you were going to have a 500-pound drone, it probably would be obnoxious, but it's not going to be as disruptive as a helicopter. And maybe if we find that becomes a problem, then we can take that out and change it. But I think the idea was that a remote controlled object is just kind of a different category. And we didn't want to accidentally prevent someone from using a drone, especially one that's not on the same level as airplanes and helicopters. So it was discussed about very large drones, but I guess this is the language that they settled on. So it was part of the discussion, and like all things, if it's something that needs to be changed, it can be changed in the future.
Mr. Fuller, do you have a proposed amendment to change the language of the definition?
I still get back to the meeting that triggered this whole thing, which it wasn't really talking about drones or hot air balloons, that it was focused on the, what do you call those, ultralights, John?
Ultralights.
So I do agree with Nate, because technology changes rapidly, and I saw somebody with a drone that's got 4 big propellers on it, and that, it depends on your definition of obnoxious. I don't know that it's going to reach 500 pounds, but they make a lot of noise, and I don't know what they're going to carry in the future.
Are you aware of that technology currently in production?
No.
Okay. Then wouldn't it be wise to go ahead, or perhaps be wise to go ahead, and if that starts to happen, then an amendment would be appropriate for the definition? Yes?
Well, yeah, but here's what would happen. I mean, if somebody did that, then they could say, wait a minute, I'm grandfathered, I got my thing in now, and tough, you can't stop me. So, I think so. I don't know, these are the 2 new words that came up here that I saw at the very end here, the definition. Before, when I was scrolling down, it said,
The thing I've learned in my years of writing zoning bylaws is you can write zoning bylaws, you could spend months and months on writing those zoning bylaws, and if people are not sitting in the planning commission participating in the discussion about those bylaws, Mr. Cherish, you can relate to this, you were there for a while. You never can predict every single thing that's going to happen. You try to do the best you can. This came out of a kind of a heads up from the state that they started to see some of these helipads popping up, and towns started saying, I'm not sure we want this.
Interesting, because I thought I would alert, I represent Cavendish also, I thought I'd alert them. Turns out, they've had an ordinance, they don't have zoning, so they had to do it through an ordinance since 2013, because somebody built a helipad in their town. Now they have one helipad, and now they have an ordinance that no more, and no runways.
So
I don't know exactly how they worded it.
So the focus, kind of from the alarm, if you will, was that be careful. We're seeing a lot of. I don't want to put a finger on anybody. Perhaps they're transients that are moving in from down country, whatever, buying houses up here. They got lots of money and they got a helicopter and they're putting in whatever. It seemed like that was what they were trying to caution us against, and the planning commission thought it prudent to go ahead and address that. We came here and learned from you, John, that it kind of, the way we wrote it, says a few other things.
And Cavendish tried to prohibit, tell them they couldn't have the helipad, but they had nothing on the books, and so they couldn't prohibit it. So that's
Correct.
kind of started the ball rolling.
And that speaks to what Dave's talking about as far as the grandfather rule. But the point is, we're ahead of something here in the beginning for our town to start with. So what's the board's?
I think we can move forward with this if we can come together by, I believe that adding some words in here that would also address the ultralight, specifically the words, that would be a friendly amendment, and it doesn't have to go back to the, I don't think I agree. I agree with the concept in general. And then if we develop those right now and just add those words in there, whatever the definition of the ultralight is, and add it to the definition, Article 7, then we could close this hearing and adopt it, the bylaw. Because I think would you agree that that's a minor add?
Ryan, I'll defer to you on that.
Well, so I guess my question is, are you trying to add that to the list of exclusions, so ultralights wouldn't be something that are regulated?
No, not regulated, but up to a certain weight limit, or to include it in that name along with drones and hot air balloons.
Well, you could do that under the.
So those two listed items are things that are excluded from this regulation. So if we were going to add ultralights, then ultralights would be something that's excluded. And so I guess the purpose, the main intent was to regulate full-size helicopters and airplanes. And then you get into this nuance when you get into smaller types of aircraft. And so we knew that hot air balloons were something that we said, that's something that's not the intent. They don't make the noise level. When it comes to drones, it's a little bit more tricky, but I think we're still at a point where if someone is using their property for takeoff of large drones, it's still probably not registering that high on the decibel meter. It's probably annoying and obnoxious, like a lot of other things are, but I don't think it's the same. It's not the intent of this bylaw. It's to try and reduce the intensity of larger aircraft. So that's when we get into the nuance of the ultralights. That's something that's even a little bit more difficult for us to navigate. And in the discussion that the Planning Commission had about this, this is where they landed. They discussed ultralights and whatever the other type of fan-powered little aircraft are. So, without knowing that much about them, it sounds like there might be small ones that might be excluded from this or exempt from the prohibition. But if there are ultralights that are larger than 500 pounds and they require an FAA number, then it wouldn't be allowed to take off.
Brandon?
Do drones and hot air balloons and ultralights require an FFA numbered registration?
Ryan?
From our understanding, it's based entirely on the weight of the aircraft.
So
So
anything,
if it was over 500 pounds, then it would.
so anything that flies over 500 pounds.
Would require the FAA, right? John, does that sound consistent with what you know?
I'm sorry.
Anything over 500 pounds requires the
It's
FAA?
gotta have an end number on it.
Okay. So then a small ultralight
Yeah.
is okay, and a big
I'll
one
give you an
is not okay.
Example, Rene Bergeron up on Golden Ridge used to fly an ultralight out of his field. And under this ordinance, he'd still be allowed to. Stan Spencer, just up the road, used to land his Super Cub in his field. That would not be allowed.
Right. Okay. So, where are we at? Mr. Fuller, does that satisfy you what you want to see?
So you just mentioned some names, so if people are currently using their property in that vein now, would this ordinance prohibit them from doing so?
I don't know, well, Stan doesn't live there anymore, and I'm not sure if Rene is still flying. I haven't heard him for a long time, so he may have just given it up.
Here's how I think it would apply. You said he was landing it in his field. And although we don't really want that, he'd probably be grandfathered, but he would never be able to go out there and actually lay down a landing strip because this stops the development. If he hadn't already done the development, this would stop the development. Right?
But the reason that we went back to the planning commission, I'm a little confused, but the whole reason was to take up ultralight. It wasn't, we didn't mention, at least in the minutes, I don't recall saying anything about hot air balloons or drones. So that's why I think we would have adopted it then, and then John came in and said, wait a minute, the ultralights are kind of nice, and he added that some people like to have a little bit better pad to go off, so it might not be a grassy field. We're not.
I called Mr. Harrison during the planning commission meeting to run the language by him, and at that, he felt that covered the,
That we're looking at now.
yes.
So the FAA N number language, that line anything that requires an FAA N number, that's how the planning commission dealt with the ultralight question. There's a range of sizes of ultralights, so you can't just, or I don't think the board wanted to prohibit all ultralights or allow all ultralights.
Correct.
So they drew the line with the FAA N number. It's something
Correct.
that's a little bit more.
And one more thing, Dave, we added development along with use, which moving forward would change Stan's thing if he was landing in his field. You wouldn't be able to do that if it's an FAA number and numbered plane. You wouldn't be able to land it in the field anymore.
The field, no improvement in the field, it's just field.
But it says use. It says development and use. So he wouldn't be able to use it that way either. So he wouldn't be able to develop a runway or use it, even the field, as a runway for an N-numbered machine. Ray. Thank you. I don't know why you sit on that side.
Just for clarity, hot air balloons do require an N number with the FFA. I just checked it online.
Okay,
on
thank you.
The website for them. So that's probably why they're in here saying you don't have to have, that's excluded because it does require an N number.
Thank you. We all set?
So I'm by that, okay, so I'll take up whatever the language is on that. So does this language here prohibit somebody from putting asphalt down to land their 499-pound ultralight? Okay,
Ultralight?
Yeah.
They're 499-pound ultralight?
yeah,
No,
okay.
it would not.
Is that not included under development? Is that,
Yeah, but the plane that they're putting it down for is under the regulation.
Under the-
oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, okay.
And paving on its own doesn't require a zoning permit. It's not included in the definition of development.
Okay?
Is this a hearing then? So it's a hearing on, but technically, just the name of this is a public hearing on, what is it, Article 2 zoning districts and district standards for
Article 7.
helipads?
Private airstrips and or helipads.
Yes. So, going forward, you close the hearing as the chair?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And then we do, a motion to adopt. Okay. So, is there any further discussion on the articles from the planning commission, concerning the private airstrips and helipads? John, you're good with this? You're good with this? Language, it's okay? And everybody else? All right. I will close the hearing. It is, what time? 7:01. Do I hear a motion?
I'm making a motion that we approve Article 2 zoning districts and district standards, and Article 7 in
Definitions.
definitions of private landing strips and helipads.
Private airstrips and helipads.
Yes.
Do I hear a second to the motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Did I say in my motion that we adopt? Did I say that? I think so, right?
Yep. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion or any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion? The motion is to adopt the zoning bylaws for private airstrips and helipads and the definitions associated with. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
So that's not an interim bylaw, right? That's a permanent?
That is a permanent bylaw.
Okay, good. So it's not gonna be reviewed in a year, it's all done?
It can be reviewed anytime, and in the instance, I'm glad you brought that up, in the instance that something did pop up, you could immediately go into an interim bylaw to correct it. You wouldn't have to go through the long-standing process. You could use the interim, which is very quick.
Isn't that for like 12 months? There's a time on that.
There is, but it's a short period, it's a different hearing process to get it adopted. It's so that you can, if you have a problem, you can fix it quick. That's something that's built into 24-117 municipal zoning bylaws, which is state statute stuff, so there is a way to fix something if it's not working or if there's a problem. Okay, so, next, draft local hazard mitigation plan. I don't know if it's faster.
Hi there, good evening everyone. Can you hear me out there?
Yes, we can.
Alright, great. Hi, my name is Malia Cordero. I work across the street at the Mount Scotty Regional Planning Commission, and I'm here tonight to talk about the local hazard mitigation plan. So that's a planning effort that I've been working on with Ray and Rick Bates and some other volunteers. And it's a public planning process, but the purpose of the hazard mitigation planning is to identify actions and policies that we can implement over time to reduce risk and future losses from natural hazard events. Hazard mitigation planning enables local governments to better protect lives, property, and natural systems. So it's a 5-year plan, and it talks about how to reduce disaster losses, break the cycle of disaster damage, reconstruction, and repeated damage.
I'm going, Malia?
Yep.
I'm going to ask you to just slow down your speech just a little bit so people can understand you.
I was gonna say, did you give you only 2 minutes?
Thank you, dear. We can hear you good, but
am I able to share the screen? Yes.
yeah. No, yeah.
My ears don't work that fast.
I thought we were in the Indy.
I was catching it a little bit, but it's moving a little
Hold on one
fast.
second.
Stop share. And then that little arrow right there, multiple participants.
Thank you.
X out of that. That little menu right there.
What happened? I didn't do anything.
What were you trying to do?
Right there, you're all set.
Oh. Hang on. Here we go. Now I should have a little handout pulled up about hazard mitigation planning.
We don't see anything, Malia.
It's a beautiful blue sky.
Yeah,
There it is.
There we go. That's a view from Mount Scutney, actually. So, hazard mitigation planning. The hazard mitigation plans are a 5-year plan that we work with in each of our towns. The goal is to identify natural hazards that are a risk to the town, and then identify ways to mitigate and be prepared for those disasters should they happen. So the financial benefits of hazard mitigation planning. A FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan is required for local governments that wish to receive federal funds from the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program and the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities Program. I'm sure some of you have heard of some of our great projects before. So the hazard mitigation plan is also a mitigation action that you need to qualify for post-disaster funding through the ERAP Fund, Emergency Relief and Assistance. Right now, Weathersfield's rate is at 12.5%. If the town is interested in having that rate elevated, then we would have to adopt river corridor protections. So the way that ERAP funding works is that when there's a natural disaster, the FEMA, the federal government, will reimburse taxpayers at 75%, and then the state will match that with 7%, and then based on a town-by-town level, depending on what steps you take to reduce flood damage, the state will contribute extra to that percentage. Part of that percentage is also made up of having road standards, having a local emergency management plan, so that all goes toward your ERAF rating. So what funding is being used to develop this hazard mitigation plan? The town of Weathersfield received funding through the BRIC program, and we're using that BRIC grant to contract with the Madison Regional Commission to develop the plan, and then upon completion of the project, the town will be reimbursed at 75% for the BRIC funds, and then the 25% can be covered with local match or with cash. And that includes in-kind hours. So we've had grant planning meetings so far for this project, and all those hours that the volunteers put in would be counted for this local match. And then I just checked the numbers before the meeting today. There's another 23 hours that we like to contribute. That being said, everyone's attendance at the meeting tonight will count toward that. And then any time that can be spent between members of the select board, members of the public, whoever has time to look through plan documents, through the draft itself, any time that you spend looking at that, and even just like setting up a chit chat with me, or a phone call, emails, that can all count toward in-kind match. So a little bit about the timeline. Here we are in April at the select board meeting, so tonight we'll be talking about the final draft of the plan, and then the next step will be to submit it to the state for approval. And then once we get state approval, then the select board can vote to adopt the plan. So that could be next month or June, depending on when the state gets back to us. And then once the plan is adopted by the select board, then we will send it up to Vermont Emergency Management, who sends it to FEMA, who issues the final approval letter. That being said, because the hazard mitigation plan is already in process, you've already checked the box for the ERAF rating. So it's, yeah. And then next, I was just going to go through a little bit of the process of the plan, show you a couple different components that went into it, and then talk about next steps. If we have another 10 minutes, maybe?
Go.
Okay, great. So this process began back in April, where we met with Brandon and figured out the timeline of the process and the public outreach procedures. Then we had a public meeting in May to go over the current weather data, what that looks like, and do the hazard risk assessment exercise, which I'll pull up after going through this flow chart here. At the next meeting, we went through the hazards, talked about vulnerable areas, and then talked about different strategies that we could pursue as a town. And then part of that is looking at historical data, looking at different town plans, looking at hydrologic surveys, river corridor plans, those sort of related technical plans, and kind of summarizing them all within the hazard mitigation plan. Then we had the draft plan ready for review for the planning team. They went through that and we identified actions to pursue for the final mitigation table. And then we also developed a plan for monitoring the plan. So I'll go over that too in a little bit. Then in September, the draft went out to the planning team, to the state, and to some neighboring towns and the public for review. We received comments back from Vermont Emergency Management after the holidays, they took a little longer to get back to us than typically, but now we've finally gotten the ball rolling again after the holidays, so that's good. And then this is the last meeting where we have it at the select board and talk a bit about with you all about what the plan is and ask for your comments and feedback. And then hopefully we can get the plan adopted within the next couple months or so. So one of the first things we did with the hazard planning team was fill out this hazard impact table, we'll call it. So these are the different natural hazards that are identified in the state hazard mitigation plan. So we use that as sort of a template to go off of. And from that, we talk about what the probability of the future occurrence might be, and then what the damages would be to the different areas, including public infrastructure, life and property, economy, and the natural environment. This was more or less created based on a discussion of past previous data and then a combination of like local knowledge of historical events, and then looking also at climate projection with climate change underway. We're seeing that some hazards are increasing in severity and frequency, so we also wanted to take that into account as well. There's a little bit of info here about what those numbers correspond with, but I don't really want to get into the nitty-gritty. More or less, the higher the number, the more severe the damage is going to be, or the more likely it is to occur. So then, the last thing you do is we multiply that probability times the hazard impact, and that gives you the hazard assessment score. And that's just a way to sort of help us quantify and prioritize the hazards that we find are most at risk to the town. So the ones highlighted in orange, those are the hazards that we decide to profile, and to profile just means that there's a further discussion of each of those hazards in the plan. So looking more into that background data, looking more into the historical extent, the current extent, vulnerability, future trends. So the ones in red are the ones that we profile, and the ones that you profile are the hazards that you have to address by coming up with an action for, whether that be a mitigation action or a preparedness action. So we drew the line at 4.5, it looks like, and everything rated 4.5 and above was considered to be profiled. And then the other hazards were considered of lesser importance or lesser severity, so we didn't go into as much detail about those. And most of them is just due to because they're not that, they don't occur very frequently. So once we came up with the hazards we wanted to address, then we discussed the hazard action table. So this is something that we've gotten very familiar with for our plan. So some of the actions are carried over from the 2018 plan. It's a 5-year cycle, so the last plan was out in 2018. These are the actions that were identified in that plan that we decided that we still wanted to pursue. Then we also took note of which ones were completed. Then we also pulled the recommendations and actions from the town plan that aligned with municipal resilience and flood resiliency. Most of it's about flooding. And then the last sort of category of actions is based on conversations with the town, conversations with other planners at Mount and then also going through those technical documents, which I can pull up a list of if anyone's interested in looking at that. But from all those actions, we put together this table that lists for each action what type of action it is, whether it's mitigating or preparedness, which hazard it addresses, who the sort of responsible party is for getting that ball rolling for each action, the time frame that we would like to get it done during, and then a high, medium, low for the estimated cost roughly. And then on the far right, we have different funding sources that could be used. And then the actions were prioritized. There's a little color key here. The orange-red ones are high priority, yellow is moderate, and blue is low. And let me show you. These are the sort of criteria that we kept in mind as we discussed prioritizing those actions. And then the last thing that's sort of new with this planning cycle compared to the last planning cycle is that we have a plan monitoring and maintenance process.
What process?
Plan monitoring and evaluation. So essentially, it's just once a year, we'll check in with the planning team, look over the plan, talk about what actions have been completed, what actions are still on the to-do list, and what actions, if any, have changed in priority level, if there's new funding out, if there's new priorities on the town. So the hazard mitigation planning team would look over the actions, figure out which ones have been done, keep track of that on a form that we've included, and then those forms will be brought to a select board meeting just to inform them and keep them abreast of any changes. And that monitoring form looks like this, where essentially for each action that's listed in the plan, you're tracking what progress was made, what funding was used, if there's any next steps, and that's just a way to keep track of all the different actions and whether they're still a priority to the town. And so there's always the option to add to this, to edit this, to remove from this. It's sort of a living plan, if you want to call it that, and that we look at it each year and add and change it as needed. And that's the whole process. The next steps will be sending the final version to BEM, so I'll be doing that. Let's see. I want to give you all a chance to have time to read over it and make any comments or suggestions. So I'd like to get it to the state meeting at the end of May. So that gives you a few weeks to look over it. And then send it up to the state, and once we get their thumbs up, we can get the FEMA approval. And then we're done with the process.
Any questions?
I have one.
Ray had his hand up earlier. Sorry.
I just have a quick statement, when she was talking about your hours. So if any of you have reviewed this and it took you an hour or two, please document it and get it to me or Brandon, so we can include those hours as our share, because that reduces how much money we have to pay to have this done. So if each of you take 2 hours, that's 10 hours right there, till we can bill towards this, so we don't have to pay as much for our share. Just a note. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
Brandon?
Malia, page 32 in the report. Let me know when you get there.
Sure. 32.
What page is it on our screen, Brandon?
Page 62.
I'm looking at the page
61?
that has the NFIP program stats on it.
Yes, it says report date 6/20/2018, but the source says that it was accessed 8/22/23.
That's because the reports don't come out every year. The most recent one is for 2018, and then I just put access for keeping track of that.
Okay,
But
so that's still information from
it's just to show
2018.
that we've checked recently that that's the most recent
I see,
report.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, any other questions? Dave?
Malia, did you get the email from Brandon, or did he copy you about the concerns that I had, or no?
Is that the site visit that you
Yep.
emailed about?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay. You've seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to bring the board up to speed. This is the site of Route 131 and Amson Schoolhouse Road. I'm very interested in somehow getting that to be more, this sounds like a really long-term project. Little Scutney Road, the idea of this is to try to figure stuff out through basically water damages wherever you're going, wherever the things are all saying here, and I'm paraphrasing a lot, to lower the costs about fixing the problem after it happens. The entire watershed from Plymouth, Reading, the whole Amsden Village up towards Greenbush that way, funnels down into that one area of the intersection of Amson Schoolhouse Road and Route 131. Now, during Irene in 2011, Amos and Judy Jarvis put a mark on a rock right there, so that's how high the water was then. And it hasn't gotten anywhere near that level, so it hasn't gone over 131 yet. But Little Escutney Road, Ray can obviously confirm this, has been closed now since July of 2023, for I'm estimating probably at least 2 weeks' time now it's been closed from variety of running over of water. And so I visited that site, and the town paid for, or whatever we did, to put in a pull-off there where the fire trucks can go. And I'm not sure that that did anything at all to choke that down, but there's a 2 to 3 foot berm now in the water that is restricting that flow. And I'm very interested, and I'm sure that all the residents are, that we need to protect our transfer station.
Mr. Fuller, I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
Because the item on the agenda is the hazard mitigation plan.
Yep.
If you have some context within the hazard mitigation plan, that's appropriate. But this sounds more like a claim or an issue that you're concerned with addressing.
But it's in that, but it is in the hazard mitigation plan, or it should be, I would hope
Yeah, I
so.
believe we do have, well, we have an action to install stone line ditches on that road.
Well, I don't know about stone, what I'm saying is,
Is it included in the plan or not? I
It
guess
sounds
is,
like a good idea for an action that we could add to the plan.
okay. Then I'll allow you to continue, Dave.
well, I'm just saying, that the site, I'm particularly bothered by the site, and I'm not alone.
I know.
The town just put a $400,000 culvert in Lottery Lane. I mean, the whole water, even from over on Plains Road, Piper Road, sheds over to that site. So there's a road network, there's a number of residences and everything that are affected by that site. And if we're talking about hazard, and I read the top language where it says that we're trying to mitigate some of this to lower our costs of resolution after the facts, then it seems to fit, at least to look at. And I'll stop there. Yeah.
Ray?
David, would you consider that high, medium, low?
Oh, no, it's high, it's high for me. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of property around that area, and it has changed from more so than Irene. Irene happened, ironically, in 2011, and we were able to navigate our way through Lottery Lane and leave Little Scutney Road open, and 106 had to be closed. It's strange how the topography works, but that's...
It sounds like some of that would be a good conversation for you to have with her directly as she's working on this plan. I recognized Ray to speak.
I think one way to word it, Dave, or sorry, Chair, would be to improve the flow of water through that area, not just to arrow out that one spot, but there's also that bridge, the old white hotel that they did talk about buying and tearing down. And that ledge, there's an old dam in there, the downstream of that bridge, that restricts the flow a great deal as well. So that whole area, that whole bottleneck should be in the mitigation plan to look at and try to address. And I think they'd probably call that, unfortunately, Dave, it'd probably be like a medium instead of a high, but it would be high, medium. I mean,
Well,
it would be-
I would definitely think the state ought to be involved to protect their road, which is 131, and the flooding of 106
Right.
up to north of that. They have an interest in this. Twofold.
The biggest issue there would be if they did something below the bridge or changed the bridge to make it wider, the houses in that Amston Hollow would be susceptible to a great deal of flooding. Right now, everything kind of bottlenecks in that bridge area and slows the water down. So anyway, that's how you'd word it possibly in the plan.
Malia, you got all that?
Yeah, I might connect with Ray and David, flesh it out a little more, but.
I think that would be good. Okay, Brandon?
Malia, page 36, the annual snowfall trend and annual low temperatures.
Yep,
Is there data for 2020, 21, 22, and 23 yet?
I didn't double check and get those updated.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I was gonna ask a silly question compared to what you guys are asking. It had to do with I saw the infectious disease thing in that chart. And it was,
Yeah.
it came out with like an average of 1.8, but it got a rating of 3.5. And I'm, where 4 is the highest. But the average didn't even reach, the average was in between unlikely and likely, but it ended up with a 3.5, which is highly likely or certain. I'm just trying to understand how those numbers work.
Let me pull it up here. So let's see, for infectious disease outbreak.
I think it's in the little bit down from that where you are now. The next one down, isn't it? It was on mine. Might not be on yours, but it went into another page on mine.
Whoops.
And Ray got up to say something, Malia. I'm going to recognize him. Go ahead, Ray.
Just a quick, on the discussion on that infectious disease, it has a low rate of it possibly happening, and it had a high rate on the 3.5 because if it did happen, it would affect a lot of different things. It could affect the economy, it could affect a lot of health, it could
Okay.
affect everything. So it had a higher rating due to that. That's how it might not happen, but we need to have a plan for it because it could be very severe across the board instead of just one issue.
Very good.
That helps.
Yeah, no, I understand. There's probably a lot of people that didn't. Okay, thank you, Malia. We're good on that. Any other questions for Malia or anybody
Wouldn't
else?
that include something, would it include like ticks or something? Maybe that triggered something, right?
I think, I can't remember if, yeah, we have a quick sentence in here about tick-borne illnesses being seasonal challenge and that residents believe that it's a hazard risk that is of local common knowledge and not of high concern, just because most folks know how to prevent that.
I think there's a lot here, and I think going back to what Ray had said, we probably need to go over this thing, and it may take us several hours each to do that. I don't think we're going to do that sitting here tonight, and we're certainly not going to adopt this evening. I look at this the same as I do the planning commission work. There's a lot of people in the background that have done a lot of work, and we've got to review that and know where we're at as we move forward with this document. Anything you want to add to this, or any other questions you have?
No, I agree with the additional time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the goal tonight was really just to talk about what the plan is, what we've been up to, and what the process has been like.
Sure.
What we've come up with.
I took a lot of notes. Thank you, Malia. Any other questions before we move on from this? And everybody will have the assignment of getting to read 3,000 pages of hazard mitigation.
Fun stuff.
Does the documentation of the time that we spend reviewing this need to be in any particular format, or is it just? No, just
It's
say,
just a sticky note.
Just tell Brandon what it is?
okay.
Is that all we need to do?
Yep.
And if you could include like the date and the hours, that would be good. And also,
Yeah, the number of hours.
Your name?
yeah, and if you have any questions, don't wait until the end of May to ask them. I'm sure if you emailed them, it would be better for her and us to get those questions sooner.
And who should we email them to?
I would
Brandon?
think Brandon, and Brandon could pass them on. Unless you want to do both of us, and we can both pass it on, Brandon, whatever. I don't want to give you too much more work.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it'd just be helpful if they got the questions as you thought of them.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
And you can reach me by email, phone, talk to me at the office. I'm happy to sit down with folks and chat if you'd rather do that than email back and forth to get that, so whatever works best for you.
So Ray and Dave already have a little bit of an assignment there to work on that Amston's schoolhouse area with you. Anybody else? Anything else? No?
I got one more thing.
Okay, Brandon, go.
Malia, what's the volunteer hour rate? Like,
A lot.
So, I think it's 3180 off the top of my head.
okay.
We're getting paid for that when we submit it?
That counts towards our grant.
I've just been a wise guy.
Your job, right?
And I think you guys run overtime, because this is after normal hours, so time and a half.
Olivia said she
Got
just,
another raise, Dave.
Olivia said she just quit, so she's gonna go 32.
Sign me up. Okay, all right, everybody. Hazard mitigation plan, when is this coming back to us now? When do we want to be ready with this? You said in May.
End of May, she said.
So it'll be beginning of June for us.
That
Our
sound,
contract goes through September, so we have a little bit of wiggle room.
okay, so you got that, Brendan, you're all set? So you know what we're doing here?
Yeah, will you be ready by the second meeting in May, Malia, which is May 20th?
But
Or would you prefer June? We can talk about
How's-
that.
we don't need to meet again, and so I'm hoping to get comments from everyone back by the end of May, so I can get it to the state. And then once the state has it, we have to wait for them to approve it, and then adopt it locally.
So
we
sounds-
don't necessarily need to meet for a bit.
Yeah, it sounds like a moving target, and she'll let us know. Does that sound about right? Malia, you let us know when you're ready, and we'll let Brandon know, and we'll get that on here, okay?
That works for me.
Okay. Brandon, that good for you?
Yep, that works.
Okay. All right,
Thanks,
next.
everyone.
Thank you, Malia. Good night. Next up, salt shed alternatives. Do we have lots of pictures now?
My name's Chris Rivet. I'm with DuBois and King. I don't have any presentation for PowerPoint, but I do have a lot of pretty pictures to show as I go through and talk about the salt shed project.
And you guys also have the maps here printed.
Where?
Some of them you do. Some of the other ones you will see for the first time. Since I did the local concerns meeting back in December, we've been going through not only particular alternatives, but looking at the site's existing conditions, basically the town garage site. And I wasn't thinking ahead. I had already provided the existing conditions portion of our scoping study report to Ray and Mount Scottney Regional Commission in Brandon. But I did not reprint that as part of the alternatives presentation. So I printed out those so that you could all kind of see what we worked through, what we took into consideration for the existing conditions of the site, and then move into the alternatives presentation for it. So what we've been doing since the last meeting is reviewing the existing conditions. As I said, we took into account things like land use, zoning, site topography, environmental resources, whether that be wetlands, rivers, water supply wells. We took into account how the site is used, what type of circulation patterns that Ray uses throughout the site, which is pretty much two-way traffic. And then we also have UVM on board looking at archaeological and historical resources in the area. So first couple of things, as I mentioned, land use and zoning. We kind of understand what the land use is. It's the town garage already. It's a sizable site. We don't feel that there's going to be any conflicts with zoning setbacks or anything like that. But we just looked at them just to cross all the I's, dot all the T's, and move ahead with that to make sure that there's no right-of-way issues with any abutters. That being said, the site is huge, and we can put the proposed shed right in the middle. As part of this, we looked at this one. We took into account the site topography, as well as what we anticipate being water flow. So pretty much from the town garage itself, everything kind of flows away towards the north branch of the Black River or the Black River. Anything that may be coming across Stoughton Pond Road actually kind of gets funneled along the roadway and out away from the town garage anyway. So there's not a huge concern there in terms of having to worry about water flow. What was my next one here? We looked at environmental resources, so rare, threatened, endangered species. Let me see if I have that. Yep. So we took a look to see if constructing anything new would have any impact. The site's very open, so there's very little chance of that. What we did find around the areas, we found some instances where different types of bats were found. There's even a clam-tipped emerald. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's in the river. But given that it's not on the site, we're going to be looking at the very center of the site. We feel there's very little chance of us actually disturbing any of those rare, threatened, and endangered species that are around. The whole map is red because of the northern long-eared bat that is throughout Vermont, and we look for trees of a certain size, basically, that could be roosting areas. Given that the site's so open, again, it doesn't look to be too much of an issue. Additionally, we looked at wetlands and river corridors and floodplains. So this first one is wetlands. There's some wetlands associated with the Black River and the north branch of the Black River. Again, well away from the site, not too much concern about interfering with construction. One of the concerns that we talked about previously and why this came up is just any potential for groundwater contamination from salt. I know we mentioned the contamination that happened a long time ago along Stoughton Pond Road here that eventually made it to a neighboring well. That groundwater tends to be able to migrate to these wetlands as well. So it's kind of a long-term view of it. Short-term, constructing, not a problem. But we also want to make sure that in the future, that doesn't happen again, if you will. And same goes for the rivers and the river corridors. Again, construction, we have a little bit of a floodplain that shows up here just on the edge of the property. Given the slopes that are along this eastern edge, we think that might be a little off for the floodplain, but again, we're looking right next to the garage site, and we feel that we're not going to have too much issue with any flooding or floodplain, or even need to talk to the rivers folks about potential impacts. And the last thing we looked at in terms of existing conditions, well, I guess there's two more things. The soils here. This is a pretty picture. Most of these graphics are included in the actual plan, which I'll update, Brandon, and I'll resend that to you so that everybody can take a look at it. I don't think we're going to get to a point where we pick an alternative tonight, unless you all feel really comfortable with it, or if you would like some time to look over the whole report at where we're at now, then feel free and I can update that and send everything out again. This pretty picture is all the different soils on the site. This main blue area here is it's designated as pits, sand, and gravels. It's obviously a very sandy site. You can tell that just by walking around there and seeing how it's been utilized, and the town's used it over the years for various pulling sand out and things like that to make it what they need it to be, or even using some of the material for other uses. And lastly, as I mentioned, we got UVM on board with the archaeological and historical. I haven't received the report from them, so it's not included yet in our draft, but if in talking with them, they basically have no concerns. This site's been disturbed for years. They don't anticipate, having any sort of archaeological or historical impacts in terms of that. So now to the main part of our project, and there's probably some more information here. The alternatives we looked at were basically something to replace what's there now with a little bit bigger sizing. Ray's ideal, which would be able to have an entire year's worth of salt and be able to have the salt unloaded into the stockpile within a building or a structure that's covered, and be able to load trucks too as they need it throughout the winter time, and potentially even store the chloride tanks in there as well. Correct? Yeah. So that's what we looked at. So alternative one is that, you know, as big as we can go to make sure that we can fit everything we want, loading, unloading, the chloride tanks, etc. And that building is basically 120 by 85 feet is what we came up with for a size. We would anticipate looking at an arch structure and fabric like you would see, you know, in most farms or even in some other sand and stockpile sheds. I actually have just something to kind of illustrate that. What this is, this would be an example of what we'd be looking at. And we also have a couple of different alternatives within that sizing too, which I'll show you, which we'll get into at the end. So what we've proposed here is having that structure set on 6 foot high concrete walls. It would have a footing down below grade, to make sure that the structure doesn't move, and it would be set on that. We obviously don't look at heating that building or plumbing or anything like that. There may be lighting if we want to have a light for any night work as they're coming in there. So that's what we've looked at. And where am I going with this? The pros for that are obviously we get everything we want. The con in this case is the biggest one, it's the cost. You'll notice in the evaluation matrix that I only put dollar signs so far. I hadn't had a full idea, but I do have a number to throw out there conceptually at this point, based on a project that we just did. We're about 60% of the way through the design, where we did an opinion of cost for that. It's essentially the same style building, and that's ranging in the 850 to 900,000 range for the building, excavation, and all the good things that come with it.
What's the durability of that hooped structure that you showed?
So those tend to last quite a few years. The steel can hold up for a lot longer, and I think in talking with a couple of different towns, they've replaced their fabric at 20, 30 years down the road. You know, depending on where it is. If it's really windy, it might be less, depending on those situations. I know I was down in Springfield at their salt shed just a few weeks ago, and they said that theirs was 30 years old. It had a few tears in it, but actually it might have been earlier than that. I think they said they put it in the 80s. So it's actually 40 years, and they haven't done a whole heck of a lot to it. But now that's why they're going to go through the same process that we're going through now with you guys, looking at different options for their sheds as well. So they can last a long time, and you know, the biggest degradation is going to happen in that fabric, and the steel can typically last a lot longer for that. That being said, there's a second shed style alternative, which I've seen more recently, which is actually setting the arches on piers. So they're just, you know, like a light pole base almost. And having a bunker wall inside it, more bunker style that you would see like on a farm. I have that one here too, which I actually, just based on a quick, in talking with Camp Precast, you can see the arch structure itself is set on these piers, and the bunker walls are set just inside. In talking with Camp Precast and getting a price for those These are precast walls. They're 8 feet long. I think, like I said, what I've looked at is that probably reduces the cost about $125,000 or so for this size structure. That's because there's a footing already built into the wall, and all the soils can be stockpiled right on top of the footing. You can pave right up to the edges of it, and it should be able to hold up pretty well. So we've looked at that alternative for each one of these. That's kind of like A and B. The first one being that full concrete wall where the structure sits right on top of it, which puts a lot more force than just the sand, but it also has to support the structure too and not overturn. So that's option A, or alternative 1. Alternative 2 is kind of the middle of the road between the bare minimum and the getting everything we want. We've come up with, it's about half capacity, so half a year's worth of salt, but it still enables us to, it's still sized large enough to be able to load and unload inside the building, and it likely won't hold the chloride tanks. So there's that. The two alternatives are the same: the concrete foundation or the bunker walls inside. Obviously this one is a smaller footing. It'll cost less, but you get less capacity for it. And I know at least in talking with you, it sounds like it's not always easy to get salt in the middle of the winter, or can be tricky depending on timing.
Right now I can get through maybe 2 storms with what I can fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be happy with a third or half. I mean, I don't have to store a whole year's worth.
Okay.
That was the gold plan.
All right. Each of these alternatives as well, one thing that I hadn't mentioned, it'll help improve some of the function that Ray and I had discussed during our kickoff meeting, where if somebody's loading sand in a truck here, it's rather difficult, or at least is in the way if somebody else wants to be loading salt at that time. And he said having this over here and the sand pile kind of separated would also provide like an improved operation from his perspective. And so all 3 of those alternatives provide that as well. This one I had rough cost in the $690,000 range for the full concrete foundation. Again, it's about $100,000 less for the bunker style, which looks would work just as well. So, and then the last one, the last actual alternative we have, basically we've assumed we can fit a full year's worth of salt, but it would be just big enough to store the salt. So all the operations and things would happen outside the shed as they do now, where the loader, the truck bringing in the salt would have to dump it just outside the shed, and it would have to be pushed in by the town personnel. That one, I have to go back. The half capacity was about a 90-foot by 75-foot building. This alternative 3 is 60 by 40. And that one would be just under 500,000 with an additional, for the full foundation, if you could go the bunker style, it'd be roughly, these are all rough conceptual numbers at this point, but about 75,000 is what I was getting less with that bunker style. So those are the differences. Fourth alternative, which is just a requirement of going through this process, is a do-nothing approach. Continue with the operation as it is. I think we all kind of understand that the shed itself is starting to fail. It's deteriorating, cracking, spalling, and sometime in the future could present an unsafe situation if it were to catastrophically fail. But I don't think that's likely to happen before action is taken on it, so. That's my presentation for the most part. The things we took into consideration in our evaluation matrix had to do with natural resources, permitting, land use, and operations. Really, the difference between these are the improved operations of being able to load and unload undercover.
All set? Ray, you want to speak to this?
This shed is something that we talked about 5 years ago, and you'd asked me to start looking for grants. I've been working on trying to get grants, and Martha brought up a valid point where if you don't have a design already in place, you're not going to get these grants to build. So keep in mind now that if we select one of these, whatever one it might be, or choose two of them, whatever, that enables us to really aggressively pursue the grants and have a higher possibility of getting one. So we might end up paying only 20% of a project, just so we know. If it fails and we can't get a grant, we should probably figure on trying to save up some money or make a plan, a backup plan B to pay for it ourselves if we have to. And obviously the almost $1 million shed is the gold dream, is a perfect world, and I happen to hit megabucks or something. And the number two is the more reasonable. We could even tone that down maybe a little bit more and have a third of a year instead of a half a year's salt. My goal is to be able to do it all undercover so we're not dumping salt on the ground. That's kind of defeats the purpose of having a new shed to prevent the groundwater damage.
And questions from the board? Anybody? Go, Dave.
Doing nothing's not an option. I don't know what is, but for you new members, the ceiling let go because we used to dump sand, salt from the top, the trucks through the years. I mean, it served its purpose. I mean, it lasted a long time, but rebar was showing, and we did spend some money. I think we put a couple of beams in there, but the left wall, if you look at it from the face, the left wall is starting to compromise. So doing nothing's not the answer. I don't know what is, but I'll throw that out there.
And it sounds like the other major concern is to definitely get inside with all operations.
Either that, or you have to pave more of the yard outside and hope it doesn't run out, drain it somehow so you can catch the water and not have it go into the ground, which is an added expense that probably hasn't been part of this plan.
Not yet, no.
So that would even make it cost more to be outside. So yeah, that's my goal.
What types of, in the past, I think you were looking at grants, what were you seeing for available funds from grants?
There is an availability and there has been success, but most of the success has come from going through this process first.
Yeah, I know, but I mean the numbers. What are the grant numbers? How much money? How much?
Usually it's about 20% is the max.
Okay, so it depends on what you do. You
Right,
just get
80
the 20 and the rest.
80 to
Okay,
90%.
I got it. So they are offering, I guess, up to.
Right,
You
and
know.
some grants will allow in kind. I don't know. We'd have to do more research. So if they do it in kind, we might be able to do prep work with our equipment or whatever to help out to shave some of that cost if possible.
Okay.
It all depends on the grants.
Yes, so following on from this one, if we were to go through the same grant funding program, the MAB, stormwater mitigation, VTrans offers through that up to $500,000 grant, and that $500,000, or no matter what value that is, there's a 20% match. Right. So the project planned number for that would be $625,000 with your 20% match or less.
Where you go with the 500,000 and you get 100,000 to match.
Is that what it
So that you only spend 500,000.
Yeah.
20% of 500,000.
Whatever
Yeah.
you can spend up to 500,000, you're going to get 80% back of whatever you spend.
Yeah.
So you're better off to
Okay.
spend 500 and have the project be 625. You know what I mean?
I do, I think. Any,
But we still have to make up 20%, right?
yeah.
So was the meeting's already been long, so did I see the picture right, where is it closed on one end?
It could be closed on one end, or we could have two doors on either end, so you could drive right through. I think I had that. Oh, I didn't have that in here.
Usually
That's
one
okay.
end-
It's
has
in
a
the
wall
report section of
fabric
it.
on the top. It's not solid wall all the way up.
So it's not a drive-through,
Correct.
it's,
You can do it either way.
okay.
You can do, yeah, you could do one of these sheds either way, where you would have, yeah, this one here, where it's not, it's closed off in the back there. But you could do it where you create an opening here and drive all the way through.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is because I don't really know, but I know the state has been lowering their use of salt and everything, so suppose someday we have something else come up similar to what I just spoke about, the zoning, whatever the regulations we went through. So what would you use the building for? It seems like it would be pretty good, but you have a clear cover.
Hangar. Sorry.
So I don't see that as being bad, that was a good thing.
But there is a lot of technology out there with liquids instead of solids, be it plant-based or whatever, and that's where you can store all your tanks. You know, that, you still have to have a place to store all the crap or stuff.
What, just out of curiosity, what type of wind, that building right there like that with an open end on it, what type of wind can that withstand?
Off the top of my head, I can't answer that
'Cause
question. I'll be honest with you, I don't know the exact answer. I know that they are designed to state standards or to specific wind loads.
I don't want to
based
see
on
it
where
turn
you're
into a
putting-
parasail.
Yeah,
And that's why you have the windows in the back that are open, so the wind can go through it all the way.
Yeah.
yeah, and you could keep the whole back open if you wanted to. You could have it just go right through.
Well, that's
We
what I'm
wouldn't have
thinking.
to
If it
do
was
as far
drive-through and you
along.
had that kind of an issue, you could open it up so it doesn't,
Yep.
let it, John?
Question, I assume the frames are heavily galvanized. What's the lifespan of a frame in that kind of environment?
Those probably 40 or 50 years is my guess. I know, like I said, Springfield's is older than the 40 years that they have, and it's just now starting to rust out. They've had a few small issues, but
That unit that they've had for 40 years, can you describe that for us, for those of us?
basically looks like this.
It's basically like that right there?
It looks like that. It's set. It's 40 feet wide by 80 feet long, and it's set on a concrete foundation, essentially, that's about 6 feet high.
Full concrete floor,
Asphalt floor.
asphalt floor.
Yep. Their asphalt is starting to break up now after so many years.
Concrete tends to break up, react badly with salt.
Yes.
So use asphalt on the floor.
Sure.
Yep.
They still use concrete for the walls, but they try to get those rods up on top of the foundation so salt's not laying against all the steel.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yeah, so that's what essentially what Springfield does. This is a pretty tall example. What we'd be looking at would be, only about 6 feet. And then the covering would be over it. The difference between these two is the walls on this take the forces of the salt and the arches, so they have to be designed a little bit stronger. Whereas those bunker silo walls are just, they're relieving the pressure of the sand on the arch structure itself.
And what about, like, if you're gonna be doing the work, loading and unloading, et cetera, inside, what are you can open it right up, so emissions, I guess, aren't that big of a deal.
Yeah, no.
No.
It would be open. That opening is huge on that picture.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got the guy standing there in front of it, so.
Verizon's just a tiny fella.
Yeah.
Well, even on the half one, the dimension though, the machinery could be in there if you decided not to have a really lot of salt. So in other words, if you didn't take, I don't know what it says here, like
Right.
600 yards, if you said, okay, we're gonna take 300, that leaves you more operational room. in the building
Right.
at one time.
And again, I really wanted to show, like, he asked me, that's the goal. That's like, in a perfect world, when money doesn't matter. And then you end up figuring out what you can afford and what's reasonable.
I heard you say something about the lottery ticket, and I can assure you, your wife would not be spending $1 million on a shed if you won the lottery.
Probably be my ex-wife.
I was gonna make that.
Probably take half and go.
I was gonna make that same comment. I don't think you'd be spending it on that out of town.
John?
Will this project trigger a stormwater permit?
No, I don't believe it will. The shed is not big enough to trigger stormwater.
I'm asking.
That being said, now that I think about it,
The roof
probably is.
The roof itself,
it-
stormwater permit usually goes by like the parking lot, not the roof
It,
itself.
it would actually depend on the shed size. If it exceeds 5,000 square feet at this point, it would trigger it because there is more than, well, now it's a half an acre of impervious. So it's dependent on the minimum 5,000 for an existing site that already has impervious, but if it triggers a threshold that exceeds, it's now a half an acre threshold. So likely it might if we get to the biggest size, but I don't think we'll trigger it with that half capacity.
If it does, the 3 acre rule, which is already in effect on the west side of the Green Mountains, is gonna come to our side of the mountains in somewhere around 2030.
2032.
And it may be
Yep.
wise to design whatever we do to be up to date and not have to do it over.
Yep.
Anything over 3 acres, you're gonna have to have a mitigation plan. And what I've seen with the numbers, it is expensive.
Yes. It has not been a low cost process for anybody who has
And
gone
that
through the
site
3
in
acre.
particular is so close to the river. The
Mhm.
good thing is it's sandy.
The good thing is it's sandy, and there's a lot of opportunity to be able to, infiltrate that water there. But again, keeping the salt out of it is important. The stormwater itself is treated in a nice
Okay, so where are we at tonight? What are we doing tonight? Anything? This just-
if you got it, just you don't have to necessarily pick an alternative. You can take some time to think it over. Maybe choose one at another meeting, or I can come back and we can talk a little bit more. But this was to present it to you, get feedback from you, thoughts, concerns, that kind of thing, and then at probably a future meeting. Actually, there is intended to be a third meeting where we present a final alternative, a chosen alternative, to the select board and say this is what we'd like to go with, and this is how we'll finalize our report that way.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a deadline of what, June 1st on this?
It's probably going to end up getting pushed back at this point.
There's a deadline for the grant itself. So we have to get it.
Yes, and Scott Gurley did say that those grant timelines can be extended.
Okay, good, thank you.
So listening to Ray and Dave's questions or points, I'm wondering if the two of them ought to discuss this a little bit. We used to have a highway representative to the select board. We don't have one of those at the moment, but what I was hearing Dave talk about was the ability to have machinery inside of that building. So that kind of speaks to what that size is going to be.
Well, here's an even a bigger deal. So, and it just hit me right here. My cow barn is 60 by 144. I mean, that almost matches option number 1. My red barn is 40 by 64. So it's the
matches
barn
option
that's
three.
down,
Matches
the
62.
barn that's down below the other one.
And
So,
matches option
If
2.
anybody
That's
wants to
3.
come look to
That-
see what the dimensions are.
60/40 is the option 3.
That's
what we
right.
had.
That's right.
No, I'm just saying, if you want to see a building that is gonna be about the dimension, what that is, not the height.
Right.
But the square footage.
What is the, what is the, well, I guess you haven't really got there, the proposed internal height. What is it?
The intended height would be around the 34 to 36 foot high internally.
And is that at the peak of the arch, or is that at the?
That would be at the underside of the arch.
Okay, and
The
what is it?
underside of the frame.
And out at the top of the wall, where is that?
That would be 6 feet. So there are arch.
Not the concrete wall, the tent, all the way up. Keep going up, right there. Nope, right there.
Yeah,
Right here?
Where's that? Well, that corner that's right there where your pinky just was.
it's probably
Yeah.
20 feet. Just
Yeah,
do the math.
probably
If he's
20
Well, I'm
feet.
just thinking about what you had said before about, a truck going in there in a dump or
they
a
got a
bucket
dump.
or something hitting it.
That's why,
So
he's still
that's why
using
the peak is 34, 36 feet high, is because that's where the dump
It's
would
actually
fit.
designed to be high enough for a tractor trailer to dump in there, 'cause that's what they deliver.
Okay, wow.
Okay?
Don't go 36.
No, no. No, you can't do that. Okay.
No, and that's really good to know, actually. So that, you're designing that for a tractor trailer? Because, all kidding aside, no.
Yep. And that, they could pull in partially and just not have the complete body.
And you're still
inside
not
the building.
dumping outside.
And it would still be dumping inside.
Correct.
They don't have any live bottoms on that?
They have, they put poly in the bottom of them so they're really slippery, but they still have to go up almost all the way.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all considerations of dumping inside, and, because when you come back with salt in your truck, you gotta dump that off too. So right now, we're dumping it pretty much on the ground or in the entrance and then pushing it.
So I guess it still leaves us looking at the two things. What is it you really want? What are we gonna give you? And how are we gonna pay for it? I guess that's three things. But we're not deciding all of those things tonight. So where's the board wanna go now? Any other questions at this time?
Well, so we just heard that what AOT said June 1st, and sometimes these, I think we should think about maybe giving an answer by the end of May. When do we go into the one meeting month thing? Do we go into? The reason I say that is because anytime these moving targets are given, they tend to all of a sudden, then they change and they say, whoops, you lost that round of grants.
Yeah, surprise,
So,
surprise.
Yeah, no kidding. So I'd be a little nervous about that.
Yeah, the V-Trans stormwater mitigation grants actually are, I believe they're in the fall, right, Martha? That the applications are due.
I would really, it would be nice if we had this done, obviously, before, so at the next round, so I can apply.
Yep.
Right.
My recommendation, if it's wanted, I reviewed this and I kind of have an idea of what I'm looking at, which is the half a year, or maybe a little less, a third of a year, and then still being able to load inside. That's where I'm kind of at.
And what kind of cement structure, the barrier walls or
I
the?
have not yet decided. I think I prefer that.
This one here?
Yeah, they're just a lot stronger, but it's all money.
It's a lot more secure too. Well, it's also money if you put it down so low that the salt ends up around those steel bars and rots them out really quick, and now you got a, building that's gotta be replaced.
The one thing I will say about these, there are options out in the Midwest of various heights of these. The one that Camp Precast has, they only have one mold for this type of bunker silo, and it's actually 12 feet tall.
12 feet?
Yeah. So the structure will sit up a little bit higher, and then this, the straight part will be just up and over it.
I would have to do research myself or whatever to look at it. I don't know about that style a lot, so.
So I guess it's those would be the questions that we'd need to deal with here.
And what I'm planning on doing is, again, I'll update the whole report, everything we've gone through from the very beginning. I'll include the costs as well, because I hadn't had those in hand when I provided this. I wanted to make sure we got on the board for tonight. And then I'll update those and provide those to you as well.
And the decision you're actually looking for us to make is to say, move forward with exploring this design?
Completing that design, and that would be our final design, and that's what I would base the grant on.
Gotcha.
And paying for. You can pick the size, and you can decide the wall thing later. It doesn't really, I don't think that affects you much.
And you need that answered by
I personally would like it sooner than later, just so we can make sure that we can be in the next cycle with it.
Can you do it by the end of May?
Yeah. I believe, I mean, if the thing's not until September or October that it's due, usually.
Okay.
And that,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, I'm not drawing the plan, he is, but,
End of May? End of May?
yeah.
Yep.
I would say the deadline would be at the end of May to give him the answer what shed we look at.
Well, I don't want to push it at the end of September.
No,
You know, that's a surprise that we were just talking about. We don't want to get there. Martha?
So is the desire to keep the total project cost below 625, since the maximum grant is 500,000? You know, anything, if you keep going up in price, you're not gonna get more than 500,000.
Yeah, anything above that 625, and it's no longer considered a match. The rest of it is town funds. Or another grant of some sort from somewhere.
I got you.
I've been hearing from other planners at other RPCs that those salt shed costs are just escalating.
Number two that was recommended was a 50% annual size shed. And you're talking about going down possibly to a 30. I don't know how much that's really going to change the size of the building or the cost.
I don't either, that would be a question. If we went down to like a third,
I can look at it.
the goal is to still be able to
Yeah.
build inside.
The volume calculation doesn't take that much extra effort, so we can plug that in and
So-
figure that out.
If the board made a motion, right, made it around, you looking at something around option 2, which is looking at a partial year, do you need it more specific than that?
I'd say
We probably at least have
change it from
to,
50% to,
yeah,
a third,
And have-
33%.
yeah, and have a building size.
I don't know that we need a motion at this time for that, though.
No, that's what I'm
They
trying to
can just
understand
do that.
what they need
Yeah.
to move forward with what they have to do.
Yeah, well, the tricky part will be when that comes back, where does that land financially? Is it within the 620, 625, or is it greater than that? And even at 620, where's that 120 coming from? You know, that's the part we gotta figure out. You know, what are we gonna do? So, but I guess that at least gives you some direction on where to go as far as, you know, what you wanna do and timeline to get it in and start working, moving forward.
One other thing just to keep in mind is that if you start down this road, you get the grant, and you start doing the design part of it, say you put 100,000 into the design portion, and then costs are escalating, and now it's up to 750 for the design that you chose. You're still not gonna get the more additional funds, so, and if you don't proceed, you have to pay back what you used for design. So
Okay.
that's just a cautionary note.
Yep, I've had one town do that.
So is what he's getting paid for is grant money right now? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Or any other information anybody needs on this tonight? We're all set? Ray, you all set? Yeah. Okay, and Brandon, you're good. Martha?
If I can just clarify, with this portion, this is not part of that. This is paid for by grant funds. You're not gonna have to pay this back.
Oh, okay.
That's when you get into
Thank you for that.
design. That's when you get into the design and construction, the next stage.
Oh,
But
okay.
if you
It's a
don't-
design and construction grant, and if you go ahead and design it, and then you say, oh my God, this is too much, we're gonna back out, you gotta pay them back, you're not gonna cover that.
Whatever,
Okay.
whatever
So
the
it's not for
design
this
cost.
fella here, no.
Whatever the design cost.
Okay.
Hand back to
This is
V-Trans.
Scoping, planning.
Okay.
This is paperwork.
Okay, so as far as moving, like having Ray go to the 1/3 size and trying to get those numbers, that's still under this grant?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Just want to be clear. Yep, okay, good.
And you finished for the moment, then your job is finished until we figure it out, or?
No, like I said, I'm gonna go back and provide you additional information in a more structured document here.
Thank you, John.
with some additional plans. I'll include some of this information that I've provided tonight, so you have a full picture of everything, because I had only just provided the three alternatives and where we thought they were going to go. The little descriptions, we did provide a little graphic of how the salt pile and the loading and unloading could occur inside the building. That's within the text itself. And then, yeah, the last part of it, once you choose a direction, is we finalize a scoping report, and then present that.
And so you'll work that out with Ray?
Yeah.
Because he's the man of the hour on that.
Yep.
Okay, all set? Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you again.
Have a nice evening.
Wind excavator bid. Brandon, you starting this off?
I can. So we advertised the invitation for bids. We advertised it in the Valley News, the town website, and also the Vermont Bid Registry. We received 2 bids. We conducted a public bid opening, and the 2 bids that we received are from Quality Fleet Services and Wood CRW Corporation. Quality Fleet Services came in at $326, Wood CRW came in at $225. The trade-in offer for Quality Fleet Services is $28,000. Wood CRW Corporation was $27,000. They both include a 5-year warranty. Quality Fleet does not offer a 6 or 7-year warranty nor a 5-year service plan. Whereas Wood CRW Corporation does. It's $850 more for the 6-year warranty, or $1,635 for the 7-year warranty. They do offer the 5-year service contract, and that's $12,000 extra dollars. Closest service location for Quality Fleet is in South Hadley, Massachusetts, whereas for Wood CRW Corporation it's in Williston, Vermont. Ray and I reviewed these 2 bids, and the recommendation is to accept Wood CRW Corporation with the 7-year warranty option and 5-year service agreement. The total cost after trading in 2009 Cat backhoe and including the warranty and service agreement is $213,000. Following the select board's decision tonight, if it's a decision in favor of moving forward with this recommendation, we'll meet with the treasurer and discuss financing options. So at the next meeting, we'd be prepared to present financing options. The town did vote to borrow up to $150,000 to replace the backhoe, and we do have highway equipment acquisition reserve account, which currently has a balance of $223,000.
So the borrowing, I know you're gonna get to, that leaves a balance of 63 over the borrowing that was authorized by the taxpayers, right?
It was up to $150,000, so we're gonna look at, the reason why we left it like that is because we're gonna look at different financing options. There is a 0% interest option that we wanna look into, that's 36 months. We also wanna look at 5-year and 7-year options. So we could borrow 105, for example, and do the net difference from reserves, or a combination of things. So I think I want to talk to the treasurer about that tomorrow, depending on what the board decides, and find the best financing mechanism.
Any questions from the board regarding the bid that we've received and what you've heard so far on the possible financing? Up to $150,000 is authorized for borrowing, and there's also a potential option for, I think, a 0% finance.
Yes.
But that would still only be for up to $150,000, correct?
Yeah, the voters authorize up to $150,000. We can't exceed that.
Correct.
For borrowing.
But that's not until till July 1st.
I'm not sure what that point has to do with it.
The first payment wouldn't be due until that
Oh, okay.
payment cycle. You get the loan and have it in, they call it in arrears.
Okay.
So you pay it a year later is your first payment. So that way you can budget accordingly.
What's the wishes of the board? Does the board want to accept the recommendation, make a motion to accept the bid for Wood CRW Corporation on the wheeled excavator?
So one of the things we talked about when we went to bid was just making sure the machine matched what we need, right? And so from what you guys, your expertise in looking at the way they came back on the specs, are you feeling like that is the machine that would do what you need it to do?
Go ahead, Rick. Maybe we should move that to this side.
I think both the machines, both the bids came in that met or exceeded the minimum spec. And the minimum spec is what we picked as what would be adequate to do the work we need to do. So that spec sheet we sent out was the minimum spec. And if you met it or exceeded it, you just write yes or no, and then why, how you exceeded it, and then the cost. So it came down to cost. And one was $103,000 more than the other. That's a lot. I mean, one obviously had a municipal discount. I didn't see one on the other bid, whether they had it or not. It doesn't, that's what they bid. So.
The warranties and service contracts are important as well. We've been doing that with our equipment that we've been buying.
Yes.
And whoever doesn't realize that the service contract's not just the work of doing the service, it's actually buying all the oil, all the filters the day we buy the machine. So for 5 years, it doesn't matter how much those costs go up for those filters and that oil and that grease. It's all paid for now. So we save up to 30% or a third. I know with the Cat Grader, we saved up to a third in cost just by buying a 5-year service plan. Because you're gonna buy the oil anyway. You have to buy it to do the oil changes and whatnot. So if you pay ahead, you skip all those increases, as a general rule of thumb.
Good for 10 days.
So, any other questions regarding the bid? Dave?
Just for the record, when you read the specs, the service contract is not the same. I know one company doesn't offer it, but, so the way around that, Ray, is that the mileage and the call-out is not included in that number, which any company could work to their rules and not the town rules. So that number of 12,537 doesn't include a trip charge or, I don't know, they wrote it, you'd have to read the specs, for the length of the contract. So you somehow have to calculate in that you're going to get a bill for that service, filters and oil, that, and probably the disposal is accurate, but mileage and a trip charge was not included.
So you would look at the chart and calculate how many times they're gonna come. You know how many miles it is, and they charge X amount of dollars per mile, and it takes them an hour or an hour and a half each time to get here and back, so there's 3 hours of labor. So their labor rate, that would be in addition to this, and it wouldn't be paid for up front. You wouldn't save any money on that, you'd still be paying for that.
My point is that all the service trucks have really stepped on the bills. You know, it's not unusual to get up into $200 an hour plus
Right.
$50 or $3 a mile both ways. You can't get anybody come to service even my hay baler. It's $300 just to walk in the yard before they turn a wrench.
So there is times where a 500-hour service is gonna happen, and it takes, 5 or 6 hours. You look at what they're gonna charge you to come in there and go back, and you might hire a trailer cheaper to drive it up there, drop it off, and then pick it back up and bring it back cheaper. You have to look at that, you have to figure all that out,
But the service contract still is worth having.
The service contract pays for every single service that machine's gonna need from the time it's, the same thing with CAT. They come, with CAT, we do oil checks or oil samples every 250 hours, and every 500 hours they show up and do a service. So we do 250, they do 5, we do 750, they do 1,000. So it's, it definitely saves, all the oil, everything's paid for. It definitely saves right out of the gate.
Okay.
up to a third just on oil and filters. But yeah, like Dave said, you're going to be paying for the trucking and the labor for them to get it there and back. But when they're there doing the work, that labor is included.
Yeah, but you're gonna pay that, whether you have the service contract or not, you're gonna pay for that man and that trucking.
Correct. And then you're gonna pay for the hourly rate plus
Yep.
oil and filters
Yep.
up as you go.
So is there a motion, to accept this? Anybody? Not hearing much.
I can make that motion to accept the recommendation.
The recommendation is to accept. Brandon, you wanna?
Yes, to accept the bid from Wood CRW Corporation with the 7-year warranty option and 5-year service agreement.
And that's it for now, right? Because the financing comes later?
Yeah, and that
Financing
is
to
a
be,
trade-in of our 2009 Cat backhoe for $27,000.
you okay with that?
Yep.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes,
Go.
here's where I'm at. It shouldn't come to a surprise that I don't support this, because I don't think fair opportunity was given. I want to give credit to my father, who's been gone since July 17th of 2008, who served this board and sat right in this chair. And believe it or not, you can't make this up, he was involved with the backhoe controversy. The specs at the time, the board at that time, and we're going back 25 or 30 years, really felt strongly about having a Caterpillar, believe it or not. And they wrote the specs that kind of gave it to Caterpillar. And he objected for opportunity. He had bought some things from Town Line, and he was approached by Bob Marazzo to say, why not me? And so the board at that time then said, uh-oh, we might have a little bit of a problem here, and they regrouped, and they did revisit their process. But then, when it came time for decision, and the bids came in, and there were a number of bids. There were John Deere, there was Caterpillar, there was Case, there might even be a couple of other brands. The board opted to buy the highest one, which was Caterpillar. And my father got very upset, folded up his books and walked out, and he said, why are we even going through the bid process? I'm not gonna fold up my books and leave, but I don't think that I have gotten my questions answered, and so that's why I'm at where I'm at. And I'll take it up, I probably will take it up under evaluations of a different kind, because communication is at the forefront of our being here. Otherwise, you know, at the last meeting we were at, there were a couple of questions of why don't we just do what Ray wants to do? And, well, if that's gonna be the case, then I think we probably should get rid of the select board. If we're not gonna be able to do homework.
I want to throw you back into at least the motion and the topic, and.
Well, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Hang
You don't
on.
have a right to interrupt me when I'm being very calm. I didn't fold my books up, and you asked for discussion about the bid.
I have a question for you that you raised, and that is, can you explain to us how you believe it was not fair?
There was a minimum, which I've been through at the previous meetings, there was a minimum weight spec and a maximum weight spec. When they do that, obviously, you're going to, the two main construction carriers in this world, John Deere and Caterpillar, weighing things and having their operations cost money. It's kind of like, put yourself, if you're going to buy a pickup truck. You get what you pay for. Even in these particular bids right here, I haven't looked that closely, but to be $100,000 different and have the specs almost the same should raise some eyebrows. I don't know whether the thickness of the steel is the same. I don't know whether the hydraulic pumps are the same. Their representatives are saying they have a 5-year warranty. I hope this unit, or both these units, last 15 years. But, so, if you're buying a pickup truck, you don't go down the store and say, I want one that fits this mold, because they make 3 different kinds, basically, a half-ton, a 3/4, and a 1-ton. So if you throw the spec out there on a person that's buying it, you say, this is the GVW I want, obviously the 3/4 ton and the half-tons are not gonna bid. I mean, the 1-tons. So I think that that's what's happened here a little bit, and, I'm not a stupid person. I mean, you guys voted 4-1 to do it. I mean, I know what the politics are about.
But Dave, I hear that, but I don't understand how that's not fair, because you want the half-ton, but, so why would the 2,500 or the 3,500 waste their time?
No, and that's what happened here, I think. If they did, look at something, then they said, well, you know what, ours, we do have one of those, but it's gonna be over that restriction, and then, so why throw out the bid of,
Was there a maximum weight limit on this? Ray?
The first paragraph said these are minimum specs, and the minimum spec was starting between 28 and 31,000 pounds.
31.8, I read the caveat.
Correct. So the minimum is between 28 and 31.8, which is, they call that between a 13 and a 14 ton.
But if you only sold a 50,000 pound machine, you could still
bid, you just have to say no, and then what your weight was. And we would have to choose if that's acceptable or not. I mean, if it was 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 pounds heavier, but it still had the same, pretty much the same footprint, I was looking more like the size, the overall size and dimensions of the machine.
Yeah.
And the reach and everything. So I wouldn't get into the situation where it takes up the whole road.
Right.
But listening to what was just said, obviously, 50,000 or whatever the number is, costs money to build.
Yes.
I mean, so the bid is futile. The bid would have been 400,000, and given the fact, I don't see this board, even though the day of my father's board decided to pick the highest price thing. That doesn't make any sense on the bid process. When you throw stuff out, you say, okay, the primary thing is a low bid, the lowest bid. The goal.
With me, the primary thing, I could have said 10 to 12,000 pound machine and barely reached into the back of the dump trucks, and had it been a lot smaller and a lot cheaper, but I chose the middle ground. I was trying to be like the happy medium. I know that a neighboring town bought a really big machine, and yes, it digs faster, it carries more material, but every time a car comes, they're going to have to pick up and move and get out of the way for the car to go by and then go back, so you kind of lose your efficiencies. I had to pick a target, and the target I picked was that list, and I was really clear to make sure that they knew that that was the minimum spec. I really didn't want anything smaller. We could have looked at things bigger, but then it came down, like you said, to cost and overall size. Even if it came out the same price, but the thing took up the entire road, or it's really heavy or really big, we would really have to seriously think about that and have that conversation about efficiencies and size and how big, is it gonna fit in the building? Is it, can we keep it undercover, or is it gonna be stored outside, type stuff.
And this is a conversation we did have, I think, prior to the last vote of the board.
Ray, have you checked with any of the references that they
I've talked to
provided?
different towns that own this equipment, and they've all appeared to be very happy with it.
But have worked with this company?
Yes. They're the only vendor in the region. Like Milton Cat's the only cat vendor in this whole region. And then this other company that bid is a surprise to me. They actually bid a Liebherr, which is what Dwight has. They're very good, reputable machines. One thing I'm a little leery of is it doesn't have DEF, which is actually good, but the reason they don't have DEF is they run at higher RPMs, and they're air-cooled. They're not liquid-cooled. So I'm a little nervous about that. I don't know much about the machine. From the research I did, they seem solid, but it's $103,000 more. So apples to apples, the gauge of the steel, everything like that is a standard that's set nationally. It's not.
And if you had have done what you said before, which was to set your your minimum at 12,000 pounds. About, the only thing that really would have done was provided more paperwork to go through insofar as,
we could have lowered the cost even more and paid, 150, 160, but then I would have had a machine that I don't know if it would reach in the back of a 10-wheeler, or it would have, been a really small machine.
but you'd
that
be
you're-
standing here saying that's not what I want.
Correct. I picked, saying, like, a good reference is a truck, a town truck. When we bought that 1-ton, we got a 14,000-pound truck. I was trying to get a 23,000-pound truck. We settled on a 19, but those weren't available, so we got a 14. I mean, my wish would have been the 23,000-pound CV or the Ford 600 with the wing and the hydraulics, so I could have, but it didn't work. I mean, it's $20,000 less to buy the truck we got, and we got what we got. There's a lot of constraints, like the salt shed. Gold standard is, yeah, I'd love it to have everything, but I know to be responsible, you have to compromise. I won't compromise on like the outside things. That eliminates why you're building a new salt shed. You're trying to, well, one, be safe, but the other is, I really care about water quality. When I'm dead and gone, I don't want people saying, Ray ruined the freaking water at my house because he put salt on the ground type thing. That's my thought.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion specific to the motion on the floor?
I just want to make a comment that here it says the bid's only good for 10 days, and we're past the 10 days.
That's a standard comment.
Says this proposal is valid for 10 days after the listed date, which is April 10th.
We opened the bids last week, so it, from the time you open the bid, technically.
I'm just telling you what it says.
No, I understand. I don't think there'll be any issue with that.
There.
I don't think the buyer represents the seller.
I guess I wouldn't mind asking Dave if that's okay. What part of the process would you have changed to actually address the concern that you brought, which is wondering, right? My understanding is that you're wondering if something was restricting the number of bidders.
Yeah, I think I would have opened the door wider. I would have said, what do you have? Let's take a demo, let's consider some other things potentially, let's lease for a year. I know for a fact that somebody bought a Caterpillar at town and 4 or 5 of the guys couldn't run it. 50 hours, they turned it back in. My brother drove a Cat 314 for Gurney for 12 years, and the wheeled ones are not the same as the tracks. So I guess the weight things and all of this other stuff, there's a lesson for me in it. I guess I just wouldn't have gotten that specific. I would have said, let me see what you got and go. Including whoever wanted to do it, whether it was Nate McNaughton Machinery or whatever.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor to accept the bid for Wood CRW Corporation for the wheeled excavator with a 5-year warranty, 7-year warranty and 5-year service plan. This includes a $27,000 trade-in offer and the finance decisions to be made in the future. Is that correct?
At the next meeting in May.
At the next meeting. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Kelly, did you vote? Did I hear you?
No, you didn't hear me.
So is that an abstention or is that a?
Abstention, yeah.
Okay. The motion carries 3 to 1 to 1. There's 3 in favor of the motion, 1 abstention, and 1 opposed. The motion carries. Town manager update.
I just have a couple of things tonight. We moved a couple of meetings around last week that we had scheduled. Obviously, we weren't going to hold our emergency management meeting because we had an issue surface with the Ascutney Fire Chief. So we did reschedule that. Excuse me. we did reschedule that emergency management meeting to the 24th at 6:30. It'll still be at the schoolhouse. We also rescheduled the Budget Advisory Committee meeting, and that's been rescheduled to May 6th at 6 p.m.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, sir. Just a quick reminder that the Ascutney Basin Bridge Project bids are due on April 30th at 11 a.m. and the bid review will take place at the 5/13 Select Board meeting. So the next Select Board meeting will be reviewing those bids for the Ascutney Basin Bridge.
Who's doing any of the work with that? Regional planning or no?
The Ascutney Basin Bridge Project,
Yeah.
that's us internally,
Oh.
and Todd Hittinger as the engineer.
You kept him to do it to complete? I know he did a little preliminary work, but you're keeping him to do the whole, from start to finish?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Yep. Bike and pedestrian grant, we did receive notification that we have been awarded the bike and pedestrian grant. So the next step is we'll advertise an invitation for bids. And once those bids come back, we'll review that with the board and the awarded grant and decide whether we're gonna move forward with the project or not. Water district updates. We just received a grant for $50,000 to develop an asset management plan for the water district. So the plan will include asset inventory and condition assessment, mapping assets, analyzing life cycle costs, risk assessment, and funding strategies. I don't know if the full board was aware of the issue that we had with PFAS in the water district. So we did have to send out a notice to everyone. We applied for funding to develop an alternative analysis report for PFAS. Basically what that will do is review operational changes, potential source replacement, potential water system consolidation, potential treatment options, and so forth. We haven't received notice if we're getting the grant or not, but we expect one soon.
Am I correct in understanding that there's just the one water district here in Ascutney?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And it serves a little over 200 homes.
Uh-huh.
Yep. It's a
Plus the
small
school.
system. Plus a school, town office, library,
Yeah.
church. We're going through a website migration process, so Drupal 7 is reaching its at the end of its useful life. In 2025, this isn't of any cost to us. We're already on an annual, we have an annual contract with Civic Plus. We're just going to be going through that migration process. So you might see some changes over the next couple of months, but they believe it should be seamless, we hope. So, and then the last thing is we sent out the notices to everyone that the board awarded ARPA funds to, and they're going to be developing the proposals and coming back to give those proposals to the board.
Any questions?
Yes.
Go.
So will ARPA be on the agenda for the next meeting?
It can be.
So, not tonight, but, so there was a total that was left over after that meeting, right?
Yes.
Then I would, even, I'm on the short end of the vote that I just took last, I would like you guys to entertain the thought of perhaps coming up with some of the money that just got spent on the excavator, potentially, because I saw you earmarked like 100,000 for Martin Hall, and I think that's a little strong. So maybe, I'd throw that idea out there, I'm not sure. I mean, we bought 1 or 2 police cruisers entirely with that money. I think we bought other things before, so, I don't know, it might be a good idea to talk about.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that too, dude.
So I can add a finance option that includes ARPA funding as
So
well.
you said you were gonna talk to Steve and then, right, you're gonna get
Yeah.
whatever options together. Maybe it's a choice that we should look at.
I'd just put ARPA on it. I wouldn't include ARPA in that little part. Let us decide what we wanna put towards it.
Can you say that again?
Let us decide how much ARPA money to put towards purchase of the excavator.
Yes.
Don't, not for him to include amount in the packet that he's gonna present to us from, then when he gets together with Steve. I wanna see what the difference is.
Okay. Yep.
If any, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just threw that out there. I don't know.
I just wanna know if it's gonna, if it's worth it to spend the money on ARPA. or
I
if it's
agree,
just-
and I understand where you're coming from, but it might, some of that might depend on which avenue they're presenting.
Yes.
So there may be several different, which is why you want to have the decision
Yes.
here.
I wanna make
get
the
it.
choice, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. But you might demonstrate several options of totals from ARPA. Whether you're doing the, what was it, a 3-year finance at 0%?
Yeah.
Right, there's that option. You know, what does that look like? There's other options, so there might be different levels at different options, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
But she wants us to decide.
I got one more question. So, is it under town manager report still?
Yeah,
So, when you're doing that though, when you make a 3-year loan, the payment is pretty strong. It's gonna be $50,000 a year, even if it's zero. You might not like that. So, can you also give us whatever the debt schedule that we have?
Yes.
I mean, what really bothers me is the future. And so, but if we had a loan fall off, it might make more sense, as a matter of fact, to pay 2 more rentals or maybe 1 more on the grader. It might make a different choice, a better choice, to fit the debt schedule.
yes,
So when
absolutely,
we're coming to make this other choice,
yeah.
we want to know what. 0 might not make any sense, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Can ARPA funds be used for an existing expense?
Yes.
Okay.
So we did the revenue replacement option, when we filed our last ARPA report, which freed up all the money.
And, just so you know, that we also double paid the grader lease bill once with ARPA funds.
Yep.
I think, what is it, 17 or something more thousand? I don't know what it is.
It was with
Outrageous.
fund balance, not ARPA, but.
We didn't use any ARPA to do that?
No.
Okay.
We didn't end up.
Did it with
needing-
fund balance.
Okay. Didn't we pay 2?
Yeah, in 1 year.
Yep. But I thought the question more was, what can we use ARPA for? We can prepay a loan.
Okay.
We
That was
can
my,
pay
yeah.
down.
In the
Yes.
school world, you can't, pay for something you've already committed for with most grants. That's why I was,
Yes,
Trying to
and they did
understand.
allow that. In fact, they liked that idea, to have a combination. Yes.
that makes sense.
They didn't want us to create ongoing expenses. So
Right.
like
Right.
hiring employees or stuff like that.
Makes a lot of sense.
Any other questions on the town manager's report? Okay. Future agenda items. We have a list here. It's growing. Anything else on that for future agenda items? You got the ARPA in there?
Yeah, we have the financing for the excavator. And there's backup in the packet to some of these future agenda items,
Okay.
to review.
Okay. Appointments, are there any here? We have Board of Listers, Budget Committee, 4 vacancies, 2 of the listers. Conservation Commission, 1, Energy Coordinator, 1, Health Officer, 1, Parks and Rec, 2, Veterans Memorial, 2, and Zoning Board of Adjustment, 1. But there are no names in, so anybody interested in any of those positions, send a request into the office to the attention of the town manager. Approve the warrant. Do I hear a motion for the warrants?
Could I ask a question
Oh,
related
yes,
to appointments?
Yeah, yeah.
Are any other towns, do they have any strategies for getting volunteers to fill these vacant positions that are working?
Pizza.
I mean, for real, like, you know, this seems like a lot to me. And I just wonder if other towns have some successful strategies to kind of get people to jump in.
Money.
Yeah, it's It's happening all around us. We have a shortage of volunteers. This list is actually, it's a little lighter.
I don't know why we have 2 vacancies for Board of Listers. I know Mr. Fuller got at least a couple votes.
I
for
think I
listers.
got a few.
I think you had 6 in my pile.
Well, what do you actually get, though? Do you actually, is there a threshold? I don't know, I have to flow in. Is there a threshold, the winner, do I get a chicken dinner?
You might be a lister, Dave.
I know, that's what I'm asking. You
Gotta go get sworn
Do
in?
you have to have so many votes to be, is it at 25 or something like that?
That was my question.
Yeah, there is a threshold. But going back to your question, Nate, I think social media is a good option to let everyone know that these vacancies exist, and then mass emails and so forth, which we did do. But maybe we do another round of those, see if we get any interest.
Well, and maybe include some explanation of what actually does this job
Yep.
require. I mean, I certainly would have never,
Another option, like, I talked with Brandon and brainstormed on some names for the Budget Committee. And I'm trying to just think of people that I know that are finance-oriented, that would come in and understand something about the papers we put in front of them.
well, I know when you're looking for donors, the most effective thing is to ask people.
Yeah.
You know, ask specific people, would you do this?
Yeah. So, social media, but there's also your connections, your friend connections, anybody you know.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So can I just go back for a step, because I think we could save a lot of time here. See the one where it says, I didn't even know it until I started looking at what we got in our packet, this Meadow Lane thing? Can Brandon just tell those people that this sounds like an old Bow Road thing, in which we don't need, really? There's a process for Meadow Lane to do what they want to do before it even gets to us. So they want to take over the section of Meadow Lane or something or whatever. So any kind of thing like that is like a road, they want it to be a class 3. Well, they got to have a hearing, we got to do all this, but,
Yeah.
so turn that over to, I don't think that's land use. Isn't there like a highway policy about how roads go up or down? And
Yes,
they
there
they get a copy of that and say, they have to do the work. And then
Okay.
we just like go have a site visit and,
That's correct.
but it says here, future agenda item, first Meadow Lane. It just sounds like that, the same old
Yeah.
Bow Road thing again.
Dave, thanks for going back to that. I appreciate that, because we do, I think he's right. I think if that's what they want, there is a policy and a process.
Yes.
Just follow it.
Follow it.
And we're here.
And Ray is part of that, because he'll go inspect the road, and then we'll have our board will have a site visit.
Yep.
Just like
Just like we did
Asa Grout
before.
Road, and just like,
Or a zoning and planning issue.
we'll actually go walk on the road.
It's anything like that. It's a process. So if they're requesting that, then, they just need to look at the policy and you too, and.
That doesn't need to
just
come
walk them
before
through
us. Right, not yet.
it. Yeah. Probably, our next notice is probably to do a site visit, that they're in process, right?
Well, no, they'll have to have certified mail to every border. They'll have to make sure, Ray,
I mean, for us, basically, it's just the notification that we've got to do a site visit. That would be our next, but they've got other steps first.
Which would be a public hearing.
Yes.
Or a site examination.
Sure. Yeah.
which isn't gonna happen until, I don't even know when.
Yeah, they have to file the paperwork for the hearing, which is part of that
It's like
policy.
July or August, or like
September,
Christmas.
October.
So Kelly shared this with me, I think,
Because Olivia left it for us.
I see.
We all had one on a table here one day,
What was
and
it?
I picked it up and I took it home, and then I brought it back thinking, well, it's been a couple of weeks, or 3 weeks, and I said, well, maybe we need to, because I don't want people to think that we're not remembering, and that's where that came from. But Ray said he thought that it had been settled, because he hadn't heard anything more from it, but the letter was dated after Ray had talked to the people, so,
That's the first I've seen it, so I just put it in the packet.
Olivia.
You need to go do a site visit.
Guilty.
Okay, so that takes care of Meadow Lane. Anything else? I know we moved backwards just with that, but that's okay. So we're okay there now? Approve the warrant, motion to approve the warrants?
So moved. Yeah, Dave, I know, you stand and sit there and wait.
I haven't even scrolled down yet.
Yeah.
There's so many pages in this packet from this wild.
General fund payroll, $17,050.51.
173.
Operating expenses, $34,038.25. Highway fund payroll, $9,560.98. Operating expenses, $23,581.11. Solid waste management payroll, $1,907.33. Operating expenses, $739.24. Library payroll, $2,366.29. Grants, $305.93. Fundraising, $157.05. Temporary bridge payment, $1,500. Reserves, $23,103.41. Total, $25,066.39. Grand totals, payroll, $30,885.11. Operating expenses, $96,424.99.
Do I hear a second?
Yes,
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
my job was way easier. I just said yes.
I see that money is back on was it back on here? Did you take it back off?
For the town clerk?
For that yeah.
Yeah, so basically what that was a project for COTS, and that's to digitize old land record volumes. The contract was signed back in October 5th. There was an initial payment of $11,000, and this is the final payment to
Okay.
complete that project,
Yep.
so.
I thought I saw it on here somewhere.
Yep.
So it was income or expense?
It's an expense.
Expense.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Now, hold on a
I-
second.
Okay.
Go ahead, you go ahead.
I was just out of curiosity, I noticed that on April 17th, there was a legal bill about a select board election inquiry. I was just curious what that was.
What page?
Oh, God, I don't know.
On the general fund?
What date did you say? Oh, the general fund.
April 17th. Was a bill for $803. And I just was curious it's not that I'm challenging it so much, I was just curious what it was.
So that was the question that was raised over the communications that existed for the chair position. And I responded to the board, I believe, and explained.
Where did you find that, Rika? So I'm trying to find it.
Probably under S for,
So that's page 5 of 6, Dave,
Oh, he even knows where it is.
Way up. Oh, keep going. General fund, right?
Yeah.
and that's page 178 in the packet.
6.
Yeah,
Yes.
like a lot, killed the 48
Sort of
trees.
right in the middle of the page.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Well, there's no trees because
Sheeny
back in
furlong.
2020, you guys used to print the packets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now here I'm gonna have a friendly suggestion. My research was
Wow.
free, done by VLCT.
$33.
So, please go to VLCT. You know, I mean, we use the town council, and I've had this talk before, like when we got into it with the fire departments and everything. Lawyers, no. And they have that same information, you know, that there's no money, so. It's a friendly suggestion.
I think it's further down the page. 419 Savage Open Meeting Law, VLCT. Does that have anything to do with that? I don't know why it would necessarily.
No, that's Olivia's course. She's the open meeting law enforcement officer.
But I didn't, I'm not registered with VLCT, and I contacted VLCT.
So I got a question to ask. In the general fund, on the page 1 of 6, which would be the very first page, halfway down the page, what is this? I probably should know. Competent CCI managed services at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
So that is the IT, we break out IT per department because I like to see the total cost of operating each department. So depending on how many computers you have within your department, you
We
get
have
charged.
11 departments.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We have,
Competitive computers, right? That's
Yeah,
the
it's our-
CCI.
Oh,
Yep.
I said I probably should have known that.
Well, is it 11 department or is it 11 computers?
no, you have admin, finance, town clerk, listers, land use, police, 2 fire departments,
Okay.
highway,
It
solid
adds up
waste.
fast. Yeah.
Adds up quick.
Yeah.
And then each department has a different number of computers.
This is why we pay him the big bucks. And we get nothing. Crumbs.
That's
We
the
get
only question
crumbs.
I had.
That's gonna change. We got 31.80 an hour. I remembered that from that sitting in
Yeah, we got a raise.
But only if you're working on mitigation.
Well, you'd be surprised how many hours are gonna run up.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Everybody happy with all the numbers? Kelly, you all done
Yeah, I'm
now?
all set, yep.
Okay, no further discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion to approve the warrant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. It's unanimous. Any other business? Brendan, anything? Oh, we wanted to talk about the potential for a possible executive session as a special meeting. And that has to do with the old Bow Road, I think, right?
Yeah, and I'm still sort of leaning towards just doing it quickly on 5/13,
Okay?
I think, if possible. I mean, we can hold a special meeting if everyone wants to do that.
This meeting would be with the town attorney, so, legal bill. And Brendan talked to me about it today. There's a lot going on over there. Probably can't really discuss it much more than that.
So it's got nothing to do with the town road? It's got, like, remember we
It's
said
got to do with everything, Dave.
It's
0.61.
really,
It's
It's
complicated.
got to do with everything.
it really is pretty.
Sounds like it's complicated.
It is. It is. I mean, I thought he was gonna shoot me through this guy was
What
gonna
would
shoot
it-
me through the phone.
What would it come under? So,
Legal. It would come under legal, 313, Title I, 313, D, I think is legal.
what does everybody else think? I don't know that I'm into a special meeting, but can you
Well,
brief
that's why
us through?
He said the 13th would, that was the 13th, when he talked to me, he was a little bit concerned about,
I think,
the involvement of those out there and what's going on, and that we might need to do it ahead of time, but the 13th is a regular meeting.
I'm only talking about us. I think that Brandon has the ability to send an email to at least brief us on, I don't know nothing about it, and strictly put up in there, that, we've done it before, confidential, don't reply.
That's the dissemination of material, that's legal within open meeting law.
Yes, from him as a manager.
That's correct.
To us. So if you could save some time and energy, you could tell us like a little bit ahead so that we might have a little background rather than
Save our
coming in
important
cold.
time.
And you can ask questions of the town manager in regards to, well, do we have this document, do we have that anything that has to do with information, you can request. And you can
you
discuss
have
it.
all the documents, but I think this particular case, I think we need to have an executive session. I don't,
Okay.
I make a motion, do we need to do that
No,
today or is that the next meeting?
no, this is for the 13th. This is
Okay.
just kind of a heads up
Okay.
of business coming. That you know that we're gonna be,
Okay.
we're gonna need to go into an exec session.
How long
And
you-
he's thinking probably half an hour to 45 minutes.
Wow,
That's why I started talking about a special meeting.
okay. I make a motion to adjourn for tonight.
okay.
Do I hear a second?
Yep.
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Yep.
Aye.